Good evening, everyone. It is 7 p.m. Time to call the Monday, October 21st, 2024 meeting of the Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission to order. Staff could start us off by confirming the presence of a quorum.
Mr. Bunkefist.
Present.
Mr. Orkay.
Here.
Mr. Khan. Noted absent. Mr. Dr. Keen.
Here.
Ms. Carlson.
Here.
Mr. McCarty.
Here.
Mr. Mooney is absent. I know Mr. Neal is virtual. Correct, sir?
Present.
And then Mr. Woodard.
Here.
I believe we have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. There are no changes. Agenda will proceed as published, taking us to approval of our minutes of the October 7th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion from someone regarding those minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the October 7th, 2024 meeting minutes.
Motion from Chris Woodard, seconded by
Second.
Victor McCarty. If staff could please call the roll so we can get Mr. Neal's vote since he is virtual.
Mr. Bunkefist.
Yes.
Mr. Orkay.
Yes?
Dr. Keen.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Mr. Neal.
Yes.
And Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Minutes are approved. There are two consent agenda items in front of us this evening for approval as well. And we have a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion from Victor McCarty to approve, seconded by, was that Chris Woodard?
Yes.
If staff, please call the roll regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. Bunkefist.
Yes.
Mr. Orkay.
Yes.
Dr. Keen.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
And Mr. Neal.
Yes.
And Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Consent agenda passes.
You see, Neil on that, I did not notice his smile.
What do we have to see?
I believe we need to see you, Mike, when you are voting for an item, just so you know. So if you could
Said he would keep, I reminded him of that.
Camera's been on this entire time, so.
Okay.
So
No, there
there
it is.
you are.
Oh, look at that. Lovely outside.
on second thought, turn that off. You don't wanna know where you are anymore.
Thanks, Mike.
We have an item of business, the food truck ordinance 2409-ZOA-4. This is in front of us this evening for a recommendation to city council. Is there a-
Should I read the rules before we
Oh, did I skip over that?
jump
Everybody
in?
knows. Thank you for interrupting.
Yeah, we
me.
gotta say 'em, gotta
Not
say 'em.
ready.
Yeah.
So quickly, so for items of business today, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the plan commission. The department will also describe what action, if necessary, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, which probably will not be happening with our food truck item, and the commission will then act upon the petition. For general procedures for workshop items tonight, the department will introduce the petition stating when the item was last before the plan commission. The plan commission and petitioner will then discuss the changes made to the ordinance using the issue list as a guide for the discussion. And once the discussion has finished, the department will summarize any final change that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning for an eventual recommendation. And then general rules of conduct tonight, please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask you to please exitly quiet the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. And finally, we would like to remind those attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel much better now. So we all have a reminder of the rules. Now we are ready for our item of business, which is the food truck ordinance, petition 2409-ZOA-04. In front of us for a recommendation to council. If we can have a staff intro and
Sure thing. So, food truck ordinance, this is one half of a two-part process essentially. So, kind of concurrently, this is going to the council, the food truck license section, so that's a addition to the. Thank you. Yes, so there's an addition to the Muni Code establishing a food truck license across the board. In addition, this is an amendment to our zoning ordinance establishing the temporary use and event permit as it relates to food trucks. So it essentially sets the parameters on what kind of event does and doesn't require a permit, the duration of that permit, and various entities that might be exempt from that permit. Do you want me to just kind of do a quick run through of the different elements, or?
Is everybody in the room feeling comfortable with our current status of the food truck ordinance to be able to make a recommendation? Questions, we get more,
Yeah,
or we can move on to a motion.
I would love to answer questions on this. So I think that we do need to vote to waive the rules, to suspend the rules, because this is kind of, I don't think we permit recommendations at workshop.
Because we're in a workshop meeting,
Yes, ordinarily.
that being the case, or, yeah,
Yeah, so was there any more discussion on that?
I think if you could give us a quick run through,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to go into detail, but just give us a quick overview.
Alrighty. I did this last time and everyone looked very pained, so I figured I'd give you an out. Alright, so we have events and situations that do require a permit. And those include special events. These are for basically any event that's open to the public for either commercial or civic purposes. That's defined in this ordinance and will be defined in our UDO. On HOA property, breweries, distilleries, and other establishments in which the serving of food is incidental to the consumption of alcoholic beverages, that was really a catch-all to protect Grand Junction Brewing, Urban Apples, our current businesses that have successfully had food trucks as part of their business. And events held at public park property. And that's also subject to Parks and Recreation review. So events that are exempt from the permit, so they will require a license through our muni code, but then will not require a license, not require a permit. Events hosted or organized by the city of Westfield, other local governments. Private events if they're used for catering purposes. And mobile food vehicles operating in a PUD specifically permitting food trucks, of which there are a couple. And in addition to this, any mobile food vehicle that serves alcohol, so a pull behind wine trailer, every issuance of that requires a separate temporary alcohol license, and as a result, we are requiring a permit to review every, I guess, occurrence of that, to verify that that license is being obtained every time.
And alcohol specific, that's really per the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, they have to apply for a new permit every single time they wanna take their wine trailer to an event.
Yeah, because they, through the state, they'd have to apply for a separate alcohol
State.
permit every time.
The state, they have to do it every time, so here they have to do it every time.
neighborhoods that have recurring events that bring food trucks in can take the responsibility to essentially get the permit for their own facility to have not necessarily the same food truck over and over again, but a food truck for their regularly occurring events.
That is correct. So essentially, we have a process in which kind of an event that will have reoccurring food trucks, so say HOAs who do food truck Fridays. Instead of having every individual food truck get that permit, the HOA can apply for a 3-year permit and then just kind of cycle in different food trucks within a pre-approved location, essentially. So it takes some of the onus off of the individual food truck operator and makes it easier for HOAs to operate like that. And that also extends to any other kind of entity that does that, so wedding venues, different alcohol establishments.
All the trucks do need to have their license as discussed.
Business license.
Any other questions?
Just as a general recap, this essentially establishes the same set of rules for everyone within our municipality, that if you want to have food truck at your event, you go through the proper process, whether it's an HOA or the city, and we will all be working from the same list.
There's no other questions. We are in a position now to go ahead and look for a waiver of the rules, suspension of the rules, so that we can go ahead and send a recommendation on this tonight.
So you'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules?
That is where we are right now, yes.
I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules to consider.
Making
just
a recommendation tonight,
to-
yes.
In order to make a recommendation tonight.
Second on that motion?
Second.
Motion from Chris Woodard and seconded by Victor McCarty to waive the rules. And call the roll on this, please.
Alright, Dr. Keen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mr. Bunkefist,
Yes.
and Mr. Horkay.
Yes.
Alright, rules have been waived.
Now we are ready for a motion regarding the recommendation on the updated food truck ordinance.
I move to send a positive recommendation to the city council.
Motion from Dr. Keen for favorable recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Billy Bunkefist. Staff could please call the roll on this.
Alright, Dr. Keen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mr. Bunkefist,
Yes.
and Mr. Horkay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Yep. Moving on, we have one workshop item in front of us this evening. Warren Farms, Kimblewick, Phase 3 PUD. Petition is 2409 PUD-20. And have a staff intro and then have an update from the petitioners team.
Yep, alright, so thank you, President, and good evening, members of the APC. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item in front of you this evening is the workshop discussion for the Claiborne Farms or Kimblewick Phase 3 Plan Unit Development District. So as a refresher, this rezone request is to establish the zoning for an extension of the existing Kimblewick residential community. The subject real estate is about 87 acres in size and is generally located north of and adjacent to 151st Street and east of Shelbourne Road. Since the petition's September 3rd public hearing, there have been numerous modifications seen within the project proposal. One being the elimination of the 21 proposed single-family lots directly accessible from Shelbourne Road in the general northwest of the original real estate. Two being the decrease of the quote-unquote Del Webb / age-restricted lots from 202 to 150. And three being the increase of buffering and tree preservation on the perimeter of the real estate, especially north adjacent to 151st Street. A full list of revision modifications can be viewed within the corresponding staff report. So this petition had its council first reading on August 26th, its public hearing at the APC's first September meeting, and an APC workshop tonight. There have been additional communication that has come in through the general public since the petition's public hearing. A compilation of all public correspondence has been, can be seen within Exhibit 10, and which includes all comments received since the petition's submittal in August. The petitioner and their representative are both here tonight. They will be providing an update of the materials and are available to answer any questions, as am I. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioners team, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is John Dobashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Pulte Homes of Indiana, Rex Ramage, Jim Schenover, Dave Compton, Dave and Rex with Pulte are here. As the Plan Commission will recall, we presented the matter at your September Plan Commission meeting and now here to present plan revisions to you and obtain additional feedback. And I want to start, I'm going to walk through the slides that we have to share with you. Those slides were uploaded earlier today. There's no new information, but we've just annotated some of the slides and provided some additional measurements on those to help facilitate the discussion and give you some context with regard to the modifications that have been made, in particular with regard to the amount of open space and the tree dimension, the dimension of tree preservation area. So I'll start with the first slide. As you're looking at the screen, you'll note from that first slide, the site has been reduced by 21 acres. The area that was removed from the plan is this 21-acre parcel here that had frontage along Spring Mill. And as you'll see from the next slide with the old plan on it, one of the things that one of the things that we did when we reviewed this 21-acre space, there were several comments about the context of the area and the character of the area. One of the other items was, can we facilitate more expansive tree preservation area? And as you can see from this plan, the old plan had these lots with a 50-foot tree preservation area on the back side of the lots, which those lots, when it's pinched in, that property wasn't very deep or wide, if you will. And it couldn't be accommodated that we would provide much more than a 50-foot buffer. And with the modifications that were made to the plan, expanding the buffer areas from 50 to between 150 and 200 feet, all surrounding the site, Pulte made the decision to pull this area from the plan, removing access to Shelbourne Road, addressing some of the concerns that we had seen or heard about both buffers and proximity of those different areas of development. This area was not an area of development that was part of the Del Webb. It was intended for traditional single-family homes. I think I may have indicated at the last meeting, one of the benefits here about developing the site with Del Webb community is it's not introducing a whole lot more kids into that space. There's a lot of larger parcels there, lots of trees on the site. For people to, I think the benefit of that is to maintain some privacy. You know, you can't build a fence tall enough for kids not to want to climb over and run throughout those spaces. So not having a neighborhood which is kid-centric, if you will, and more towards the age-restricted community helps add to some of that enhanced privacy. So that area of 21 acres was removed. It removed 21 houses, and now we're down to a total of 87 acres. One of the other primary changes that was made is with regard to the access location along 151st Street. This is 151st Street here. Some of the neighbors to the south had asked, can we move those away from directly behind houses? And you'll see another exhibit in a minute that we put together that helps illustrate that. So we moved, the entrance was moved over further to the west, where it's across from a pond that's in that space. On the south side of 151st Street, there's still a mound with tree plantings on top of that mound. The mound that you see there, if you're more accustomed to driving down or Town Road, the mound on Town Road is a lot more significant. But there's still a mound on the south side. Pulte would supplement the plantings on that mound as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The other primary component was the reduction of the number of homes from 202 that you see here in this space down to 150 homes. And that primarily came through the reduction of enhancing the buffers along the perimeter, expanding tree preservation, as well as providing drainage interior to the site. You can see here the prior plan in that area was planned for detention. All within that space in that area is wooded. The detention has been moved from that space. This is an approximate location of one of the homes, internal to the site here and internal to the site here. So today, the revision where there was a 50-foot buffer, tree preservation buffer along this area, it's now 150 feet of tree preservation, and then another, you see that light green band in the back side of the lot, that's a drainage swale that would occur on the back side of the lot. So 150 feet here where it was 50, 150 feet here where it was 50. As you recall, this was to have a frontage road immediately adjacent to the 151st Street right-of-way, and things have been turned around here. So you've got the 151st Street right-of-way, that path is approximately the same setback as the path further to our east. You can see it on the plan. Then beyond that, there would be a 50-foot tree preservation area. Beyond that, you get to the swale and the closest lot. We've got another example that I'll show you here in a few minutes that really zooms into that space. Along our eastern, our western perimeter, there was a 50-foot buffer here in this area, that's been expanded to 200 feet, 200 feet, 200 feet here. Again, the removal of the pond, so there's all tree preservation through that space adjacent to the closest resident within that area. Open space was previously 27%, and now we're just over 50% open space. And tree preservation in terms of acres is now 27 acres, which is approximately 31% of the total site. But again, the vast majority of that comes in the expanding of the buffers along both the east and west perimeters of the site, as well as the south and the north area there. Rex, if you go to the next slide. This is just some updated information that we provided the plan commission. We talked about the reduction in the number of lots and the Del Webb lots, tree preservation, open space. Can you scroll back to that slide? We provided a trail connection here. That's a new trail that would connect onto the trail system. The amenity facility within Kimblewick is right here. The trail connects over to that space in that vicinity. If we can go past the table. This really helps give you an idea of what these spaces look like in terms of the distances. We have lots here that are Del Webb lots, and there's about 400 feet removed to the closest estate, our larger parcel here to our west. That's a 400-foot dimension. This 200 feet isn't 200 feet to the lots, it's 200 feet of tree preservation area to the pond, and then I placed this dimension in here. We're 600 feet removed to this home. 200 feet removed from the home and the outbuilding that exists here. And we're almost 2,000 feet, about 1,950 feet between our line here and Shelbourne Road. That's where I talked about, we removed that piece in that area that's different in character. That rural southwest area along Shelbourne shouldn't have an impact there. One of the other things that I want to mention before we move to the next slide is that Pulte's committed to extending the road improvements that you see along 151st Street today all across their frontage. All the way from the west perimeter where they stop today, all the way over to Shelbourne Road. That's an additional, approximately an additional 1,000 feet of improvements. If you've driven that segment of 151st Street, if you haven't, I'd encourage you to. It's a rough segment of roadway, and I think improving that will address the part of the concern that was mentioned by residents in terms of that condition. I think one individual at the public hearing mentioned that in particular. How's that gonna be addressed, and wanted to let you know Pulte's committed to improving or enhancing that cross-section of roadway in that space. A couple of the other dimensions that we provided, it's approximately 350 between homes here, the backside of lots, and the backside of lots here, where before we were at 50 feet of tree preservation area, now it's at 150. Likewise here, 150, the amenity center's right here. There's some lots on the other side of the pond right here, and those will be about the same distance, about 350 feet before you get to the closest lot. So again, we think we've made significant modifications that help address that concern that were mentioned by residents of Kimblewick about what they see out there back window. Not that there was a commitment made previously by the existing owner, the owner of the real estate today, that there would be trees preserved, but the expectation that people may have had when they bought those lots about what would and wouldn't be. But nonetheless, Pulte has made revisions that triple the amount of tree preservation and buffer between not their lots, but the closest property line here, the shared property line along that edge. Actually, if you can go to the next slide. There were a few letters that the Plan Commission received in the last few days. What we've done is we've blown up that space, our plan, placed it over the aerial. This cone-shaped area kind of provides you an idea of headlights. If headlights are, if someone's traveling south exiting the development on 151st Street, previously it was about where the V is. Our entrance was over here and it shined on the backside of these lots. Today we're at the pond. Again, all these dots are on the top of about a 3 to 4 foot mound, but Pulte's agreed to enhance the landscaping in this vicinity. So when headlights come straight on or somebody sweeps when they're turning left or right, that additional like evergreen plantings, it won't be deciduous trees, it'll be evergreen plantings, so they're, and shrubs, so they're protecting those views. These are the two letters you got in the last couple days from these two residents. But we did hear from all the residents along here about how can you preserve some of the trees that are along this north edge, and where previously we had a plan that took out everything and made it look good from the street because there was a mound planned and additional planting similar to Town Road frontage. Pulte has shifted from that plan to make it look as though it does from Town Road along 151st Street to preserving all the trees within that space there to address what the residents would prefer to see looking out their back windows. Both are fine from the street. I don't think one is lesser so from the other, but the residents on the south side of 151st Street preferred a plan that would save existing trees so they see out their windows beyond the mound and the existing plantings that are there on the south side. They still see that tree line. It's not removed and they see just open sky. They still see, pick up that tree line along the north side of the roadway. Actually, if you can slide up to the next slide. And then this picked up the dimension here from the back of lots to back in lots. Coincidentally, it's about 335 feet here. There's over 100 feet between the existing travel lane and the backside of these lots. So there's a lot of space there. We understand that the first about 20 to 25 feet of that space is gonna be tree lawn. As you see, it's gonna be that path, and then beyond that will be where the tree preservation occurs within that 50-foot buffer before you get to the backside of the lots. And then the dimension here, that was about 350 plus. We're 335 plus on the backside of the lots there. We have one more slide. And then one of the things that was asked, in addition to amenities that are already provided within Kimblewick, this shows the trail connection that's provided. And Pulte's agreed to add, as part of the discussion, that there would be enhancements along the existing trail. This is that emergency connection that exists. There'll be bollards on either side of it. It actually doubles as a trail, so it continues to create some additional loops for people to walk on in that space. And we'll pick up additional areas where there are enhancements to the trail network. I want to correct myself because this one blue circle right there may be an error, because I took this exhibit earlier today and I was modifying it on the plan, so that might be, that's where it's picking up, is along the city's right of way, and I don't think our intent was to put the seating area along that. It may have been, but if not, it would be in the site. We'd have 4 different areas identified on the plan for an enhanced seating. This is actually a photograph of existing seating areas that are provided within Kimblewick today along. This is the long L-shaped pond here, and beyond that's the trail and seating areas that they've got today within Kimblewick, so we use that as an example. And our last exhibit, there were communications provided to the Plan Commission requesting consideration of additional paths, and Rex put this slide together to show you where we've gotten comments. We've gotten comments from people where the red X's are that didn't want to see additional paths in their space. Adjacent to them, in particular the owners to the west, and then the one request you got from the gentleman who lives here, who's got the path behind their lot, and I apologize, I think it was a male, a gentleman, who we got the letter from, but I can't remember if it was addressed from he and his wife or just his wife, but I didn't mean to pigeonhole that. But he had drawn this and he had made this recommendation about would we provide paths in those spaces. And Pulte's preference is to not do that, but when I want to entertain the discussion with the Plan Commission if they thought it was appropriate, and the reason for that being is twofold. One, there's over 3 miles of paths existing today within the Kimblewick area that provide paths for people to walk on, both in this public right-of-way and through common areas. And the other, when based on the standards in place and the drainage provisions that we have to adhere to, if you were to pave a path through that space, which is all the wooded area, you'd have to clear approximately just short or just shy of a 20-foot segment, because you got to build the path up so it meets drainage, so you don't have water standing on the path, and you have to mow a swath along either side of the path. And the concern would be that approximately they'd be impacting approximately 2.6 acres of existing trees within that space, where the primary goal, in particular along the west perimeter, was to preserve existing trees within that space, and a path would ultimately eat into that, whether it was that band at 20 feet, but we've estimated it about 2.6 acres of additional trees may have to be removed to accommodate the path. Those are all the items that we wanted to share in our presentation. I'll sit back down, and we have lots of folks here that can help address your comments or take additional questions that we'd be prepared to talk about. Are there other items? David? Thank you.
You're good? Yeah. So, fellow Plan Commissioners,
Yeah, I'll
this is
jump in.
our opportunity to workshop.
Yeah, I'll jump in first, just because Counselor Tam here behind me and myself, I was thankful to be invited as well. Last week, there was a neighborhood meeting, that had, I wanna say, around 100 residents, from Kimballwick, so it was a greatly attended meeting. And I know that there's an additional 25 residents, viewing right now, I checked YouTube, so at least 25 since the last time I looked. So again, I just wanna, thank everyone for providing their input, just being involved in general. And in terms of additional input, I believe we've received an additional 46 pages from around 23 residents since the last meeting. So again, a lot of eyes on this, so appreciate that you've gone into detail with all the changes. And with that, I just kind of want to do a little bit of comparison, briefly recapping, highlighting some of the changes and what might be response from the neighbors and the notes that either reviewing the letters that we've received or just feedback from the meeting last week to kind of see where we're at and then just continue the conversation. It might be a little bit repetitive, but just in order to compare and contrast here. So the elimination of the development to the northwest, I believe I'd be confident in saying that everyone is in agreement with that. I think that was a huge change that received a positive reaction, so thank you for that. The reduction in number of overall homes from 202 to 150, I think again a positive reception to that. Still some being requested to be removed. We can get to that a little bit later. Enhanced tree buffer on the east perimeter and the west perimeter being up to 150 and 200. And I know at our previous meeting, I believe all of the commissioners as well as the residents did request additional buffering. So come back with over 100-foot increase, that's greatly appreciated. Kind of remonstrance to that, a lot of the residents asked, well, why is one being 150, another being 200? Someone asked, well, could it just meet in the middle and be 175 on either side? So just bringing up that question. The enhanced buffering along 151st Street, again, greatly appreciated. And the concern once more being from the folks on the south side to make sure that no headlights will be shining into their windows and such. And I believe I heard the commitment of additional buffering and so forth. So again, that'll be greatly appreciated. The increase in open space from 25 or 27% to over 50%. I marked additional open space and tree preservations are also appreciated. Someone asked how much of that is associated to block 1, so maybe just addressing what it is overall, excluding 0. So for if that individual is listening, block 1 is not included at all in that percentage to the over 50% open space. And then enhanced tree preservation efforts, totaling 27 acres of tree preservation. This I associated with all the amenity comments that we have received, and I just wanted to run through those to kind of set the scene of where we're at and how you're not going to be able to please everyone, but just all the ideas that we've received. With additional amenities being requested, these ideas have spanned from donating block 1, donating the current sales office once it's no longer needed, to both of those to the HOA, remodeling the current clubhouse, adding additional parking, adding an additional dog park, repurposing the tennis courts into additional pickleball courts, adding additional trails, those discussed a little bit, creating a trailhead on this additional trail, specifically where the additional homes now are in between the two sections over the drainage ditch. So a lot of options. I could probably list off more, but that's just kind of where we are. If again, you're not going to be able to please everyone. And the feeling that I'm getting is that we have two different groups, where one group, of course, wants less houses, more amenities, but then we have another group that are saying that we need more houses to be able to pay for the additional amenities and not having too many additional amenities that will impact future charges to the current residents. So it's kind of a catch-22, which way you decide to go. My thinking that I've kind of come to the conclusion with amenities is that, we could discuss amenities for hours at this meeting, but I feel like it's almost, and someone please feel free to correct me, that's almost fallen out of our purview because you have so many voices that are wanting to say, you know, do this, do that, so on, et cetera, that it really just needs to be agreed upon between the current residents and Pulte Del Webb of what would be the best possible solution for as many as you could. As much as I like to address amenities here at these meetings, you know, those are typical to be more broad of what you can do, whether it be seating, additional trail, et cetera. But here you're really getting to the nitty gritty of what the current amenities are able to offer and so forth. So. That was just kind of a high level recap. For those again listening, I apologize if I missed something, but we had a lot of input. Just wanted to keep the conversation going.
Very good, thank you. Do we have other commissioner comments to expand upon any of that or break any new ground?
Yeah, 21 acres, you said you've dropped that from the purchase, or is Pulte still gonna hold on to that until it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and then maybe come back later?
It wouldn't be purchased by Pulte.
Understood, thank you.
I would say that that's a good move, and I think those property owners will be very happy with that and be supportive and we can move that because you made that move, so good work, thank you.
Could we put the comp plan up so I see where this falls within a new subdivision and the
Yes.
or whatever that's called?
Oh, that is where the mouse is, okay.
This the one there?
Just try to toggle it.
Well, yeah, if you can take it to 50%.
Yeah. Better transparency.
Next one.
There you go.
We are so damn good here. I love playing with this stuff.
Do you need to turn off
I know.
the city limits?
I'm not sure how to even get to that page.
Oh, it's already turned off.
Because it's within city.
Yeah, but the city limits makes everything green. Yeah, there
You
you go.
zoom out and pick up.
Dr. Keen, that's what you were asking for?
So this is outside the new suburban, for the
It
most
is.
part. Okay, I'm gonna have a couple of questions, I think. I do wanna say that I appreciate the buffering because that was a huge issue for me. However, I'm gonna disagree with Victor a little bit on the amenities because I think when I read all the emails, this seems to be a major issue today without one more building being put up. And yes, there's cost implications in HOA fees and whatever. But if there's a feeling that the present facility is too small, and of course, for half these residents, this development is their life. They've retired, they focus on this. So if the amenity center is too small now or overused, it seems to me like there needs to be a resolution to that issue before we make an approval. Because all we're doing is passing on a problem that will end up being a problem. So I don't see two sides and not addressing the issue. I think the issue has to be addressed. Whether it's a smaller amenity center in a new development area, an expansion, other properties turned over, there has to be ways to get from phase 3 to phase one, if there's a second center put up there, expansion. But there needs to be, to me, a thoughtful expansion of this, because for a lot of these people, carriage house, I believe is what they call it, is their life outside of their home. So I don't feel like we wanna pass that on from here. I think it needs to be addressed. Now, that's the amenity issue. Since this sits outside the new suburban, this is really the first chance that I see that we're gonna be acting on what's the size of the development into the rural area or whatever. And I guess, this is just a personal opinion, I see this property being more estate home type things and and a much smaller number of homes than is what being presented. This is just to me, a subdivision surrounded by a lot of green space. It's not a unique, now it doesn't have to be 3 for 1, but it certainly shouldn't be two houses per 1 acre, which is what it is now. So I'm still really hung up on the fact that this is too dense for me for going into this area, and we're still, as I read, we're at least 1.5 years out from the new comp plan. So what we do now is going to affect what goes down the road. We're at max levy in the town, in the school, in the library. You know, money is not an issue. In fact, this gets built, most of the money will go to the county. It will not go to enhance Westfield's revenues until we get the enhancement back. So I guess I would prefer to see a less dense development at this point in time with an enhanced amenity center somewhere in there. It preserves more trees, you cut out estate homes and have you know, larger tree stands within the property. That's my opinion.
And I think that relates to the broader subject at hand. And to real quickly go back to the amenities, not wanting to pass the buck, but just something needs to be decided, I guess, between not just the two parties, between us and Pulte, but really the three parties of what the collective of the current residents want, to be able to have kind of a target that we can work towards before it gets to the approval stage. That's more kind of where I was headed towards, to not be something that's left open-ended for after the fact, because that would obviously be a disaster. But pairing the topic of amenities with looking at the overlay of the current comp plan, I believe I mentioned this at the initial meeting, is that that's a broader question of, is this land adequate to be added to Kimblewick? Or is it its own standalone development? I believe I said an island, and really if you look at the concept plan now, it kind of looks like even more so as an island, because you have two pieces on the north and south. So with the suggestions that the residents have, suggestions or that we have, so on and so forth, are we changing the character too much to a degree where it's its own standalone product at the end of the day, and it's not something that is even feasible to go along with Kimblewick, if that makes sense? And
It makes a lot of sense. We've crossed the line from the new suburban into
exactly,
the rural.
exactly.
So 2 phases here and 1 phase here, and it's not Kimblewood 3.
Can
It
you-
is,
Could you zoom
Pick a
out just
name.
a bit, and I just wanna add some, can we pick up 146th Street to, so this, we can go about right here.
Is that good?
Well, I mean, just this space.
Oh, I see.
So we've, this issue was addressed when Kimblewick was developed 5 years ago in 2019 with the Plan Commission and the council at the time. This area described in yellow, and we can spend the rest of the afternoon or evening on the comp plan, but in a nutshell, you know, staff would tell me if I'm in this space, I shouldn't be looking at residential, but there was a lot of discussion and residential was deemed appropriate in that space that's supposed to be commercial. Likewise, this area over here is owned commercially, and it's in an area that's yellow that should be identified as new suburban, where commercial might not be the right fit, but we're not, this space right here is in the rural southwest. If you look at the map and you draw a line from that point up to 169th Street, that area is in the rural southwest. And that parcel came over here. The question was, are we providing an appropriate buffer and transition from development to those areas that are more characteristic of those things that we find in the rural southwest? And that was one of the reasons we backed away from the development along Shelbourne Road. And this parcel was kind of pigeonholed in between. It's not developed like Kimblewick. It's not developed like the estate lots that are characteristic of that rural southwest. And development on that parcel from driving up Shelbourne Road is gonna have no noticeable effect on the character. The character along Shelbourne Road is gonna still be larger estate lots. But we wanted to make sure that the buffer was reasonable between the two so that there's not a negative influence on the development and continued development of that type of thing further to the west and on parcels on either side of where that 21 acres. So my real comment is we as a plan commission and as a council have addressed the issue of that transition and where that line is with this area of Kimblewick that's developed today south of 151st Street. We're trying to line up with where that is by taking away the 21 acres here and maintaining that line. In fact, if we zoom into our plan, we're further removed from the area of 151st Street, and with the buffer, then these lots here are removed from the parcel to the west. We're roughly 400 feet plus or minus, where these lots are provide a 200-foot transitional area between those lots and the lots to the west. So we're doubling down on what that is. We're also providing the existing, that block A, that's not part of open space, block B, sorry, in orange, is an estate size lot within that area that's designated for rural southwest. So I just wanted to point out that Pulte has made efforts to address it. Those efforts exceed the efforts that were made in the 2019 plan and the transitions that take place along there to protect that corridor, that Spring Mill, or rather Shelbourne corridor for its character.
Let me go back to the timeline there. Phase one was brought before the council when?
2019.
Phase two was brought before?
Earlier this year, so all the better part of 2023, and it was adopted in February of this year.
Weren't you pointing at phase two? Is
No,
that,
phase two is this 40 acres. I don't think it's 40, it's 20. This 20 acres, is that right?
Yeah.
Roughly 20 acres here is phase two. Phase one, which was approved in 2019, is the balance. It's everything here and here down to 146th Street. This is all 2019 question answered. How do we provide a transition? We do it this way. Today, where we're at with this plan is we double down on it. And that's what you see on our plan in terms of the enhancements to the setbacks and tree preservation along this perimeter. Here, there's that little pocket of woods, and the rest is open space and pond. There's a little pocket right here, woods.
Can you close the layer list, or minimize it?
Yeah.
Chris, real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
are you gonna jump into some of your comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, just as it relates to amenities, Victor, you had kind of made the comment, maybe it is or isn't in your purview. Dr. Keen, I understood, some of the comments you made as well. We went back, and did a really deep dive on some data just to understand usage of the clubhouse and all that. So the carriage house, as it's called, it's open 7 days a week, 90 hours a week. It's 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then 8 to 8 on Sunday. So there's a total of 90 hours in a week that it's open and available to the public. As it relates to the usage, there's like a movement studio, which is kind of where people do, like the fitness classes, non-weight equipment, non-treadmill type of equipment. Yeah, that type of thing. That movement studio has programming going on, so classes for the residents, only 14 hours a week. And there's not a single class that has a wait list to be able to join it. So that's about 15% of that time that the clubhouse or the carriage house is open, that has a program going on. There's also an indoor pool that has 2 hours a week of program time. And then there's a craft room, or I think they call it the derby room, that has 5 hours a week of program time. So that's about 5%. There's a golf simulator room. Obviously, that gets more use during the winter time, when it's cold. But non-winter, there might be 1 to 2 people a day that use it on a regular basis. And then there's the community room, which is primarily where I believe most of these comments are coming from. So the community room has 12 tables, 6 chairs apiece. So that's set up on an average day for 72 seats. That community room has 24 hours of program time where there's an event or something going on, throughout the week. So still, that's only 26% of the week, 26 of the available hours that it's being used. Average daily users. So in August, there was an average daily user of about 74 people. September, 67. In October, month to date, this was as of about a week ago, was 59 users between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. So, and of course, I went there this morning. We go out there quite a bit, for different meetings, checking on the facilities and just learning and meeting with, some of the folks that are employed to be there. We have a daily, a full-time lifestyle director that's there on site. And I went in at about 8:30 this morning, hung out for about an hour. Outside of the people that came in for the 9 a.m. fitness class, there was 4 people in the entire 14,500 square foot facility. So I know that's a snapshot in time, but my experience this morning where there's less than 10 people is very common, regardless of when we go there throughout the day, unless there's an event going on. Now, most of the gripes and the concerns that you're hearing from the residents are there's various different clubs and groups. There's a wine appreciation group, and they meet once a month. And so they would like to have a once a month event, but of course they would like to have 80 to 100 people. Well, the community room comfortably seats 72. You could seat more if you wanted to, but then it's got about a capacity of about 100 for standing room only. So naturally, when an event is popular, what do we do, right? We split it up and we have it multiple times a month, where we split it up, those types of things. So that feedback is not being received well, for a variety of different reasons. But the fact of the matter is, this carriage house is not over capacity. It's not overutilized, except for, I'll give it 2, maybe 3 events a month where attendance is deemed over capacity. There have been several times where they plan events, they have people come, they do, I'm trying to think, I think this one might have been related to comedy or something like that. They had someone come in, a speaker come in, a ticketed event because it was deemed via survey that it was gonna be very, very, very popular. So there's a threshold when they bring people in to say, if I don't get this many attendees, the function doesn't necessarily pay for itself. On a routine basis, they either continue to host the event without breaking even on the number of attendees that show up to these things, or they cancel it because they don't have enough interest, even though the community said that they had interest in certain types of events. So there's a narrative that's out there that we don't believe is completely accurate at all. And so I just want to make sure that we had that discussion. We came with some of these numbers, particularly on the usage. And then the number one thing that we hear when we start to talk about these things is, well, I use my key fob and 10 people come in the door behind me. Well, I was there when the people showed up for the fitness studio today. It's not one person and then 5, 10 more people show up behind them. Maybe that's the wine appreciation group that has 80 people one time a month, or the men's breakfast that's hosted one time a month, with 100 to 120 attendees. So those are some of the facts. That's some of the research that we did in response to hearing those same concerns. So we just wanted to make sure that that was put out there for everyone to understand.
The only thing I would add, Rex, is David Compton, Vice President of Land. I did the first Del Webb in Indianapolis in 2005, called Britton Falls. We studied Del Webb across the country, and Pulte has a whole division that studies Del Webb and across the country. We study it, we have over 70 or 80 communities across the country. And the number is 16 to 20 square feet per house. This was a first next generation clubhouse. If you go to Britton Falls, which is my baby, in Fishers, it's like 23,000 square feet. There are 1,223 people in Britton Falls. houses,
Homes.
homes in Britton Falls. And so we're fitting right in that parameter. Just like we found out, and for those of us that are lifelong residents of Indianapolis, the shopping malls were originally built Castleton Square, Glendale, Lafayette Square, where I grew up on the west side. Yeah, was built, those parking lots were built for the day after Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas. We designed these facilities, and I was lucky enough to go to the mayor's ball up at the event center that we have here in Westfield. What a great place for these. They're not designed to host a Christmas party. That clubhouse is not designed for that because there's great facilities. In Fishers, they have the Embassy Suites. Here we've got Grand Park, and we've talked about that. And these are designed to be functional facilities that allow for multiple classes, whether it be Pilates or in the craft room or things like that. But we learn from everyone we're doing, but this is right in the middle of the strike zone of the number that is we use across the country in like 80 different communities. So I'm not making these numbers up because Pulte studies that. We don't do, Del Webb is a separate brand that we cherish and protect in every community that we do. So I think providing this clarification is important when talking about the amenities. Yes, we're gonna continue discussions with the residents about some of the other items that we've talked about, trails, pickleball courts, and other things. But the clubhouse is sized appropriately. And I think it shows up through the demand that we have today and the excess demand. We're about 65, 2/3 built out on the original. So even if we doubled every number that Rex gave you, we would still have plenty of capacity to add additional classes and additional numbers. And these are numbers from the lifestyle director that keeps track of how many people are attending on each one of those events. So just thank you for allowing us to provide clarification.
Those are certainly very helpful numbers. I wondered if you had those, and I'm glad that you do and that you brought them. I don't spend hours and hours out there, I don't live there, but when I'm on that side of town, more often than I far used to, drive through the parking lot to see what's going on. And kind of what you were talking about, there's been a lot of times I've driven through the parking lot various hours of the day and there's like 5, 10 cars, and that's it. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have walked to the building, I don't get out and try to get in and count noses, but it did seem like there's maybe not as much of a demand as what it's been characterized, but I didn't have anything concrete to be able to reference and say, okay, maybe it really is this. The classes that are scheduled, the number of hours that you've talked about, some of these things, is expanding more of those for more hours an easy thing to do, or would you be running into a brick wall because you need somebody to be able to control them? Do you need another person or two that you may or may not be able to get if you wanted to double the availability for the uses that the building is designed to provide for the residents?
So being able to program anything in the building, right? It doesn't have to just be the fitness side of things. It could be bringing people in or doing a smaller group event in the craft room or something, who knows? Bringing in more events would be, we would need to see a correlation between, full usage or full, utilization, so to speak, of the events or programs that we have today. Or maybe it would be something, can you add a different class at a different time that would be more conducive to the rest of the community? We're not hearing that side of things. It's not, oh, you have it at 9 a.m., we'd rather have it at 11 a.m. That's not what we're hearing. So to answer your question directly would be, for us to be able to provide more, we would need to see the attendance, meet or exceed, the current capacity.
My real question is,
Yes, we can add.
based on the assumption that half again as many more people want to start doing whatever the activity is, you have
We can add
We have the
classes. There's a
ability.
full-time lifestyle director who works for the association on site, and then there's also a full-time property manager. So that lifestyle director's job, Bob, is to add those classes to meet the demand. So the answer is yes, we can do that.
You would have to find instructors to do.
Right. We have to,
That would be an additional cost then to the residents through their HOA.
I think, to answer your question, Dr. Keen, on that, on whether there's an instructor in the class, I think there's a minimal charge, like $5 or $6
Okay, so. that
to
covers
attend the
it.
class. I mean, it's not,
And that's already happening.
yes, they're already, yeah, if there's a class where there's an instructor, I believe there's a charge if there's a physical instructor there.
So that's not really built into the HOA
No.
or the monthly fee.
No, it's on
It's,
demand, because if I wanna go to Pilates and I sign up for it, I'm gonna pay a minor fee to go do Pilates, so.
Alright, so that does make it simpler to be able to say, we have enough people that wanna have
Yep.
another class, bring your $6 a month, all 15 of you, and we'll find a time that works for you and
Yep.
do it again.
Absolutely.
Just real quick, jumping back in, cause I am literally receiving emails and texts from residents as the conversation is going on.
They're listening in.
They're listening, and like I alluded to earlier, we wanna go back to the initial conversation to hit both ends here, regarding, the current comprehensive plan. Cause I wanna pose this question to my fellow commissioners as well as any counselors that might be listening or future conversations. You know, what is your goalpost? Because I do not want to get into the scenario where it's happened multiple times before, where the petitioner, you guys in this particular situation, addresses something, as again, I do not wanna diminish anything that you have addressed, cause obviously we've moved in the right direction. But once that goalpost is set, not constantly moving it. So again, just asking that question collectively to everyone, that is your goalpost, well, this is outside of the current comprehensive plan, you expect something that is a little bit less in density, so on and so forth, or is your goalpost addressing, excuse me, the current amenity needs, or just anything in general that has been asked by the current residents of what needs to be addressed, what is your stopping point to then, I'm assuming, most likely we'll be having a second workshop meeting, so once we get to that second workshop meeting, you know, that's that stop right there, and so that way we're not prolonging the issue, we know kind of a census of where everyone's at. So that's just my question to everyone there. And then second, on the amenity discussion, I appreciate the analogy of you built this facility for everyday use, not necessarily those one-off holiday larger event uses. I would ask that is just that expectation is set to the current residents, to make sure that's communicated, so that way these current issues don't constantly pop up of, you know, we have this wine club, book club, men's group, whatever it is, that we have a whole bunch of people attend to. Well, maybe once it grows out, I mean, it's awesome to have as many people attend them as possible to build that community. But once it reaches a certain capacity, well, then maybe that's just what it is, that you're out of that available space there, and maybe you have to then introduce additional times or think of all the options included with that. And again, the amenity discussion, it's open-ended, you know, what is the goalpost there, what do we want to accomplish? And then two things that I was messaged about that I was gonna get to, but just wanted to make sure everyone was able to voice, but just for those that are listening, it was noted to me and emphasized last week as well, that a lot of the current stats being shared are based upon the current 300-ish said homes that are within Kimberlick today. But when all is said and done, it'll have about 660 with phase 2 and phase 3. So just taking that into account. And then additionally, specifically the lots 71 through 75, others had comments about it, the residents meeting. Myself, though, I was more concerned with the building of homes across the drainage ditch, but then also that being a change, which yes, there were changes throughout the concept plan, but personally, I would still also like to see as few homes there as possible to preserve open space. And going back to my drone shots that I got there, you do visually see kind of down the drainage ditch, an aisleway, if you will, of a clearing. So maybe that could be incorporated better to just have a trail that goes down that way, and then you kind of have two open ends there where you're able to meet both the north and south. And then maybe that's again part of the amenity discussion where you're able to put a trailhead, so to speak, there, whether it has a pavilion or benches, whatever it is. But some sort of mitigation that has to happen there between 71 and 75. I know the residents, the current residents across the pond, they're worried about light shining through and so forth. But really, I just look at it as an aesthetics purpose of what you currently already have there with the drain and so forth. So I'll shut up for now, but want to make sure everyone is able to address their concerns.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can tell you, I have a definitive idea in my mind of where my goalpost would be. I'm not sure that we're at that, but to speak to some of the things we've been talking about here. What Dr. Keene brought up as far as where's new suburban, where's rural southwest. For a long time, I've been very frustrated and have brought it up in numerous meetings, and I tried to never do it again. But we really screwed up in 2005 and 2006 by coloring in the map the way we did. We really needed to blend colors and have a much more gradual transition. There was actually a brief discussion among some of us way back at that time about, rather than just trying to figure out this is where this kind of thing ought to be, we should look at the property lines and make it more specific to, because we're going through so many different parcels that fall into both, so how do you treat those? So we knew we were gonna have an issue, but we weren't smart enough to come up with a way of resolving it, but in hindsight, I'm thinking we at least should have blended colors so that things that happened in the southern part of this, especially along 146th Street, where it's become a whole different road than that road was in 2005 when we started crafting all of this. So to submit that we're gonna have nothing but large acreage and rural lifestyles, that was never really practical or likely to happen. The thing that I wrestle with is the 20 acres to the northeast up here, the one that backs up to the more northern part, not that part, but that parcel right there. I don't see how you don't, if we're going to do something out here, that needs to go along with something to the west or something to the southwest, which is what we're talking about in this phase 3 of Kimballwick. Because that, you can't get there from anywhere else right now. So if there is to be something that gets developed, even if your goal is let's have large acreage and try to preserve trees, how are you gonna get to that one without doing something substantial to get there in the first place? So I think we're looking at something that might actually be a viable option for there because it's surrounded by a lot of that already. I don't have the magic answer at my tongue to suggest, but that is a parcel I focused on earlier on, and I have not gone for a walk within it. I've thought about it on a few occasions, just parking the car and taking a walk, because it seemed like, just looking at the aerials, all of the forested area that was planted with the intention of doing this tree growth and harvesting every now and then, that's a whole lot more sporadic. Maybe it really did get planted that same way, but it sure doesn't look like it when you zoom in like that. That seems to be more natural growth that probably is not the desired trees that were planted every whatever the distance is to create those beautiful straight rows that when you go down 151st, you can see exactly what's happened there. It's not quite like going to Arlington Cemetery, but you can see there was a very intentionality to what was done there. But that parcel seems like it ought to be able to have something else done to it, and this might be the time, or it might not be. But that's one of the things I'm wrestling with a lot, is how do we work with this, or what might follow if this isn't what happens, to be able to get from 151st Street up that way, because coming off of Shelbourne probably is even less of a viable option. The question I also had that you've very well answered is, if we continue to see additional growth, is the amenity package that's in there really sufficient? It sounds like you believe very strongly, based on national figures, that it absolutely is. We can't be asking for things that aren't part of our ordinances, and we don't have an ordinance that says for each house or every so many square feet, you have to have this, this, and this. It's something that is a requirement that there are amenities for our residents to be able to utilize as a part of where they live. You have city parks, same purpose. I'm not sure that I would know what to suggest that we ought to add, but I made a comment earlier that the people that live here, in some regards, are actually more part of the original than the folks that are very southern end of the original Kimballwick development down at 146th Street, where it's a much longer pathway to get up to the amenity center than it would be from here. So the ones that are commenting about how remote they would seem, it's like, I'm not sure I understand how that's happening, because the distances are just so much less when you're looking at it east to west compared to north and south. So those are things that are rolling around my mind. I don't have an answer, but I think we're heading a good direction, and I like what's been brought in front of us here. To your point, I think we're probably going to have a lengthy enough discussion with a lot of material that we're gonna go over, that we'll have another one of these on some third Monday again in the future to figure out, are we now to where we're ready to make a recommendation to council, who will then have the honor and privilege of doing the real deal with this. So, others, speak up, please.
Have we ever talked about intentional transitions on this body? I can't remember. Sarcastically, I say that, but
Transitions, what are transitions?
exactly. But I echo your
Did you
point. I
define
mean,
that?
as somebody who's staring at what 146 has become versus what it was hypothesized to be back when the comp plan was done, to not have at least the foresight of some level of new suburban ideation in such close proximity to such an arterial roadway seems inefficient, I guess that's the
Ambiguous.
right word, yeah, inefficient. In the sense that this is the same as living along almost an interstate at this point and thinking nothing will ever happen down a key commerce corridor. And so understanding what the current comp plan says, it's the same thing we just battled up north near Winterberg, Ravina, and then the group that had the kind of what we call more of like a placemaker type development, but it's that same point of transition, but completely different, where you can respect that transition a little more to the north, where you're not really necessarily up against that arterial thoroughfare. But here when you're looking at 146, what it means, the connectivity between even the ideation of this commercial village at town and 146. It's just, in my mind, it makes sense to have, maybe it's not the full level of density we're seeing, but it's some level of new suburban density that, to your point, if you stare at this, to your point, sir, of even what you had done already going to the west, because that's the hard part. Where's the goalpost, to circle back on that, of hey, we're going west and now we're going north. Where is that axis crossover? Wait, we have to stop here, and I don't know that answer, nor do I think any of us.
We have a virtual attendee here tonight on the Plan Commission. Why don't we pause for a moment and invite Mike Neal to turn on his camera, or we'll go to his camera and hear from him. Do you have some thoughts that you could share with us, please?
Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow commissioners, greetings from Austin, Texas. Before I got some questions, I do have a couple questions for Mr. Domshewitz and the team. I guess as well as just some, I'll start with comments first. I think you guys went above and beyond in movement on this and the work that you've done. I really do want to say that I greatly appreciate it. The plan that was originally placed and the plan we have today is substantially different. And I believe that what you guys have done is, you know, we're looking for an opportunity here to meet these residents as close to halfway as possible. As Victor said, not everyone's going to be happy, but the goalposts have to be the goalposts. And I know that we've set some, and I feel like a lot of those here have been addressed. And now kind of what I feel is there's like some more asks that are kind of coming in, and I think that's definitely within their right to do so. And I support that. All the residents that are listening tonight, your contribution has been substantial, and it will continue to be. This is not a done deal at this stage, but obviously the petitioner and the team have tried to meet everybody halfway, and the nature of compromise in politics is non-desirable, but as neighbors is certainly something that we should look for. And I feel like the team has done a lot of that. I think there's still more to come. I'm guessing we're, as Mr. President did elaborate on a little bit, that we're probably going to be another workshop coming up, you know, in the near future on this, just because there's so much input, so much information, and I've seen Mr. Domshewitz making a lot of notes, because I can see from behind him. I can't see what he's writing. I can just see that he is writing. Just to make that clarification. But thank you for that. I do have a couple questions. They might have been addressed. It's just so hard being virtual. And so the northwest portion that had that kind of almost that individual neighborhood, you're not purchasing that land at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so, to my fellow commissioners, that does mean that at some point someone may buy this and develop it. So we definitely need to keep that in mind. It has nothing to do with the folks here today. but it's something we definitely need to keep in our mind. My second question is, that southwest portion, that I think it's block one. It may have been mentioned, but I may have, so nothing is ever going to be developed there, is that the idea?
It's one individual parcel. So
One individual parcel, and so what is but you're purchasing it, correct?
right. The anticipation is that one home would be constructed on that.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That's allowed in the ordinance. I'm sorry, Mike.
Sure.
In the ordinance, it's limited to one home on that block.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. I may have missed that part. I appreciate that. Regarding the amenities, I want to kind of get on that for a second. I don't dispute anybody's science. My grandparents. I was talking to President Tam, who I know is in the room this evening, about a Del Webb community in Sun City, Arizona, that my grandparents lived at for a lot of years, like 20 years. Beautiful location, giant development, big buildings. And I know that Del Webb, as you said, takes good care in doing as much as they can for their residents, because it's a unique type of product for folks in the legacy portion of their life who are enjoying their life, enjoying grandkids, enjoying traveling, doing a lot of stuff within their home, as Dr. Keen mentioned, and their facilities there. So obviously that's really important. I know a lot of the team knows me as kind of the pipeline guy, but one of the things I did in another former life was event and advanced planning for the governor of Indiana, president and vice president of the United States. And when you look at now the data that was presented of the usage of the building, I certainly don't dispute. I've never been in it. I don't say that I'll ever be invited to be there to take a look at it. But when you're looking at planning for an event, you're always looking at, hey, okay, do we have a building that's large enough to do what we're doing? Now, of course, this is large scale items. This is, obviously sometimes aerobics class may not meet that threshold. But when a room gets about 80% full, it starts to feel too full. And a lot of times then, maybe there's some open seats, but people aren't comfortable sitting there. You're kind of starting, it was discussed that the community room could jam about 100 folks in there if they're standing, or there's not a lot of room, that kind of things. And when you look at an 80% model, based on kind of the tenets of event planning, you start to look at, well, then, you need to start get additional space, build a new building, do what have you. And so if I heard Councilman McCarty correctly, that under this current plan, with everything else that's planned, that there's about 660 homes that would be within this space that is used for, that would use potentially this building. And I heard about 14,500 square feet facility. So when you're looking at 14.5 on this, and you divide that by, let's just do generous, 20 square feet a home, you're looking at about 725 homes. But if you take that number by 80%, you're looking at about 580, let's see, I lost my number here, approximately 580 homes. And so this is kind of right in the middle of that right now. I'm not saying that that's an exact science. You guys are the experts in doing this, so I wouldn't dispute that. But I think it's food for thought that we have to understand that as this grows and we start jamming more people in there, it is going to start to feel full. And so I definitely think I kind of fall right in between Dr. Keen and Councilor McCarty, that hey, is this something that maybe is slightly out of our purview a little bit? Maybe not. But ultimately, we're responsible for ensuring that this meets, all of the tenets of the code and what we desire in Westfield for our residents, and obviously to weigh public comment. And it seems like something, I don't know what it is, something could be done. Maybe that donation of the sales space would be enough to add some additional square footage where a wine club could meet off-site, but still within their community, those kind of things. I don't know what it is. I would encourage you to take a second look at that. I know what the numbers say. I know what statistics say. But I know from a personal human perspective, when you start getting like to that 80%, it's like, well, I think I'm going to leave. Like, or at church, the pews are 80% full. There's like a spot over there, but it's between a bunch of people I don't know. You start to, the human element starts to feel a little bit claustrophobic. And so I'd encourage you to think about that. I think the last item, and I saw some of the emails, I've read every single one. It's really, I agree, Councilman McCarty has noted that there's kind of a division in the group of some things, what they want, what they don't want. It's going to be impossible to make everybody happy. But one comment that I did see about, I think, lots 71 through 76, because it kind of takes that turn a little bit because the way the road has to be placed in, and it starts to cut down on the tree preservation. For me, I get it that everyone wants to have as many trees as possible. What I don't agree with is that because, you know, here you've got the trees and then you've got that pond that's in the other unit there, sorry, to the east, that larger L shape, upside down L shaped pond from this perspective. And so I think the point is made there with that 350 plus feet from the yellow double arrows. Even though there's not trees there, there certainly is a lot of buffer. So from a buffer perspective, I don't think it's that bad. From a tree perspective, I guess I would want to know if 100 feet versus 150 feet of tree buffer is going to make a difference in the view. Maybe it does. I don't know. But that's one of the comments that came in as Councilor McCarty was talking. They were responding back to him, which was funny. And so just a note on that to take a look at that and see what can be done there. Maybe nothing. I'm not advocating for the houses to be gone at this stage unless there's some good reason to remove them. But anyway, those are my comments, my questions. I appreciate taking the time. It's difficult for me to be on virtually. I like to be in the room, but Mr. President, I yield back my time and I appreciate it.
Certainly, we'll circle back to you if you have additional comments, let me know, but I'll give you another opportunity. Do you have?
Yeah, briefly. I think this is a difficult project to navigate for all of us because you get public feedback and it's in that rural kind of area, right? And so, how many homes has Pulte/Del Webb built in Westfield? Like, I mean, I'm gonna say 15-20% of the people in Westfield can call this place home because of you guys, right? So I mean, we love the fact that you guys are here doing projects, and I mean, we're fortunate that you guys invest into making this a better city, right? How many, do you wanna take a guess?
I probably more like 10, but yeah, we've been active in Westfield. We're very big supporters and fans of Westfield.
Yeah.
Quality of life, everything, top to bottom, and Del Webb was a natural addition to allow people to age in place
Yeah.
and also move back to be with their kids that built houses in Westfield. That's been a big draw to, Del Webb helps to be a net importer of grandparents
Yeah.
from other parts of the United States.
I said this, I think last time you guys were here I think this is a cool project. I really do. I think it would be wildly successful. I think especially considering the revisions you've made, I think that will sell and bring high value. I have a hard time imagining running into somebody that I know that lives in the rural southwest corridor at the grocery store a year from now after if this project's approved, where I truly believe in my heart that I know it's not a line, right? But it's also, it gets real gray there, right? And I can see why people that have that lifestyle would fight for it, right? And I know 146th Street's there, I get it. I mean, that's a great point though. From a land planning perspective, I could make that same argument. So it's just, it's tough to navigate, I guess is really all I'm saying. And I think making the concessions you've made definitely helps, right? And I think it's a much better project today because of that. But I think that it's just getting it to a point, and there was some conversation about expectations, right? That's really what the problem here is. We have a whole group of people who have had different expectations here for 20 years or 30 years. I don't know, when did you guys do the first comprehensive plan? I mean,
2003, then it was
yeah,
revised.
so there's kind of been 2 decades worth of expectations that a lot of people, and now we're moving their cheese, right? We're getting into their space, and so that's just why it's difficult. And we all know that. Maybe I'm just only stating the obvious, and it is what it is. So just why I think that's why it's important, and that's what's better now about this whole process is that we're actually having these conversations versus being in a public hall where you can't actually work on things and you can't communicate and you can't have candid conversations. So I love this. I am, I really am impressed with the changes you've made, I appreciate them. I don't know, you know, how, I'm excited to hear the feedback that the public is gonna, I don't know if you guys pitched, if they saw this in the public meeting, right? So I think once we filter through all that and, you know, we have some more time to digest it, I think it'll be, I think it'll be good to keep hashing it out. The amenity stuff, you guys, I think brought up a ton of great conversation. I'm not gonna beat that out. Do we allow mulch paths? Like, does it have to be an asphalt path sorry, not just mulch, but a dusty eights or, you know, something where you don't have to have an engineer, I don't know.
Yeah, we've done mulch paths.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe and it doesn't have to be continuous, but maybe there's some little additions that could be made to create little niche.
It gives a spot for the people who are gonna stay on the path an
Right,
option,
yeah,
rather than just
yeah.
meandering through the open space.
yeah, and, yeah, Lord knows you'll have plenty of mulch that comes up. Sorry, but,
Well said.
I don't know, but I appreciate everything you guys have done and all the comments made tonight. Again, anybody that is a homeowner in the area, please communicate, get your thoughts in, cause it's important.
To Woodard's point real quick, just so it's clear for everyone, the meeting that was held last week, and all the comments we've received since, they are based upon the new concept plan.
Okay.
It was provided, then it was the first time I saw the new concept plan as well,
I got it.
but there was a compare and contrast between the old concept plan and the new one.
Yeah, and I guess I'll make note, I'm sure not every resident has seen the updated exhibits at this point, and some of those public comments, I'm sure that I compiled were possibly from the old rendition. So just so APC is aware of that as well. Maybe some of the newer ones have seen maybe the updated plans, but just to make note, some of those residents may have made recent comments from the old rendition, so just so that's known.
Well, after tonight, since the agenda's been live on the website for a while, hopefully everybody is going to get up to date if they're not already up to date. Other thoughts, comments, anybody up and down around the table? Mike, Neil, jump in if there's anything else that's come to your mind.
No, sir, I think everything that needs to said has been said, and there's gonna be a lot of public comment coming back to us, and we're gonna see this again at workshop, I trust, and we'll continue to hash it out there, but thank you for everything you guys did.
So are we to the point of Kevin Todd trying to impress us with all of the high caliber notes he has been taking all evening?
This one's gonna be tricky. I'll do the best I can. I'm gonna need some help here.
But it's of record, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it
it's,
is,
it's
for
the
sure.
meeting's taped, so we've,
Tape, yeah.
not that I'm discouraging Kevin from,
It is, and everybody can
So
go
to
watch
see us
the
embarrass
entirety of
ourselves
it
over here.
over and over again, but we do tend to like to close a loop
oh,
in
sorry.
these meetings where the most salient points are enumerated and discussed to make sure that there isn't somebody that realizes, wait a minute, I said this, how come it didn't get into Kevin's notes? And you don't wanna have to go back to the hour plus discussion, whatever it is that we've had to figure it out. So staff tends to take notes so we can do a little recap before we move on from this to whatever's next.
Alright, I'm gonna, in order of appearance here, I think, so let's see. For the question that kind of came up, why are there differences in tree preservation buffer widths? Could they possibly be a uniform 175 foot all the way around? Victor, this is where I'm gonna need an assist here. You had a list of items that you kind of listed off pretty quickly. I guess that's one of my are those things that like were identified as, hey, these need to be addressed, or was it just acknowledging that, hey, look, there's this discussion amongst the residents, it's a broad range that includes these things, but yeah, did it rise to the level of, hey, we gotta make sure we're addressing?
I
And
think,
if so, can we clarify what that list is again?
Yeah, I think it was more so a conversational piece of just me comparing and contrasting the points that had been brought up of what Pulte's addressed versus some of
high level recap of last week's meeting and the notes that we've received. I would say for the most part, items have been addressed, but still remaining things regarding, say, buffer area, amenities, those, again, issues that we'll just need to.
Alright, well, let me finish going through my list and see if I
Yeah.
didn't touch on something that you wanted to be in there. Alright, that helps. Next on my list, finalize amenities. Again, this is kind of open-ended and there's been a lot of great discussion. I don't know how to further summarize that and direct that to you guys, but you heard all the conversation about amenities. This one I'm not so sure is so much for the petitioner as it is for the plan commission and council. This whole discussion about the comp plan, and how are we gonna wrestle with the comp plan and making a decision about this project. I think they've presented their case, tonight, it may be before, but I think John did a good job of kind of stepping through how they view this, fitting into the comp plan. But that's still an outstanding item that needs probably additional discussion. There was a comment about, hey, can we communicate to the current residents, that the amenity center was built for everyday use, not these large gatherings, per se. That's kind of outside of this process, but I think it was a noteworthy comment. Consider, and again, it kind of heard two different parts of this discussion too, but this lots 71, 75, 76 area, what do we do with that? And there was some discussion about, hey, can we further reduce the number of lots in that space, to increase open space and buffer? We also heard the other side of that, maybe not sure that that's necessary, but maybe want a little further clarification on what, what actually is in that area in terms of tree preservation and distances and things like that.
And just real quick, jumping in to emphasize that received additional communication since mentioning that regarding those particular lots, so that can be a continued conversation of exactly how we examine to proceed forward with it, so.
And then, thank you, Victor. And then.
Kevin, real quick, I'm sorry. If you get more communication on that, is that something you could share with us in real time?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And then the last thing I have, again, my goal is to come up with like the concrete nuggets, right? The tangible things that we're trying to anticipate change for the next iteration of this plan. A lot of great discussion, but not all of it fits into these bullet points. But last thing I have is look into considering some mulch path opportunities. That's also probably a question for us on our end to do a little homework with probably Public Works or Parks Department perhaps, and just see what options there might be. The thing that I would wanna make sure that we're understanding is, ADA compliance and if there's any issues with that caused by going that route versus the traditional paved path, so. Those are the
We can
things
probably, we can probably put it in there, but we can't call it a path.
that, yeah, right,
Just
could be, yeah.
aesthetic enhancement to the ground cover.
So, and did I miss anything that anybody expected to hear in that summary?
Yeah, summed it up pretty well. Again, it's hard to take away things that the petitioner can look at versus kind of just larger discussions.
Any further comments, questions, anything from the petitioner's team, any of you?
If I could just add one thing, and it's not related to the discussion tonight, but it's been communicated to us from the property owners that there have been a significant amount of people. This is more so for the folks listening on the phone and to disperse outwards to their neighbors. That there's been a lot of people on the subject real estate that we're talking about. That real estate is subject to a hunting lease. So to the extent that you are not a property owner of the subject real estate, please don't go on it for your safety and for everyone's safety. But so while we have that public airtime, I wanted to make sure that we could communicate that out as mass as possible.
Good point.
Thanks, Rick.
If there's no other comments, then we'll wait to hear back from you on what you would like for your next steps to be and when you would like for that step to be.
November's workshop meeting, please.
Okay.
And for, once more, the folks listening for the November workshop, that is November 18th, I believe. It's kind of open-ended.
You said that so definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to count the Mondays here.
Yeah, it looks like the 18th.
Yeah, it looks like it.
I don't see why it would
It's like
be.
he's never been to a meeting with us before.
I know.
Yes, November 18th is the third Monday. There's no holidays that will impact that. So we'll look forward to having you back in this room on November 18th with whatever it is that you accumulate. The deadline for that meeting will be the weekish before that, so you have 3 weeks to figure out what we're gonna talk about in 4 weeks.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. We have one item continue to a future meeting, being Finley Creek Estates Planned Unit Development, which may be a companion item to talk about in the November meeting. TBD as far as I know. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned. Taking us then to reports and comments, first from Plan Commission members, are there any things that you would like to report on or comment on for the general consumption of all of us?
Confirming we were kicked out of City Hall the first Monday of November and it will be Westfield.
That is our tradition, yeah, because the,
Six, I believe.
we used to try to have our meetings with all of the voting equipment set up, it just seemed a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, because it all is in there, early voting won't be happening there, but it will be set up for Tuesday. So, yeah, we'll be meeting on Wednesday, usual time, but on a non-usual day.
Mr. President, that's in the same location though, correct? Still at City Hall?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the report from the council liaison.
Yeah, try to run through it relatively quickly. Last Monday, 10/14, old business, we had ordinance 2454, approving bonds to fund Simon Moon Park Phase 2, just across the street here, and improvements to Park Street as well. This was approved 7-0. Ordinance 2456, the Trails 2 PUD, that's the crew car wash, the house next to the current crew, so demolishing that and building an interior wash, that was approved 7-0. There was a 2457 ordinance that was previously before us regarding minor text language amendment to the UDO, that was approved. Ordinance 2458. It was a town-run economic development bond, where the Lore Group, it was asking for basically a partnership with the city to be able to increase the overall standards for the development. That was approved. And new business, ordinance 2452, the 2025 non-elected salary ordinance, that was introduced. Ordinance 2453, the 2025 elected official salary ordinance, that was also introduced, and that was all.
Thank you. Plat committee met and finalized Winterberg. Plat committee will be meeting again next week, but I haven't heard yet. Is it known what we're doing, since we got a request for confirming a quorum?
Yes, we will be looking at two adjoining townhome developments in the Chatham Villages area. There's a town at Chatham Hills, or towns at Chatham Hills and Lakeside at Chatham Hills.
You did mention those. And even for somebody who's been around for a long time, those were kind of old and almost forgotten by me. That they were something that was approved so many years ago. So we'll be meeting on that. Community Development Department, any words of wisdom for us?
Billy took my update. I just want to remind everybody about the meeting change for November, so.
All right,
Thanks.
I
Short,
apologize.
that's all right. Keep it short.
even though we're all having the times of our lives here, is there a motion that we may want to adjourn?
So moved.
I may second that.
Third.
All right, motion by Victor
I'm gonna
McCarty,
second something
seconded by.
someday. You guys
I'll
do
take it.
it
It'll be a quick
so
draw.
Quick, I know, I was like,
Please call the roll.
Ms. Carlson,
yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mr. Bunkefist,
Yes.
Mr. Horkay,
Yes.
and Dr. Keen.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 8:39.
Yes, 8:39.
Have to be unanimous.
Just in
Why
case you
do I
guys